that I have found that seems to have opened up quite a few churches to being helpful both to their own people and to the secular world around them, with fewer and fewer barriers, dividing walls between them and the non-church going world around them, is just this very simple thought, that there's no bad news with God. I actually have an essay which has gotten a bit of readership here in the States on kind of teasing that out from a theological perspective, from a particular theologian who I like, who worked with Karl Barth in Germany and others, that I'll pass on to Marlon to pass on to you before our next webinar if you're interested. But that thought, that there's no bad news with God, you would think is not a radical thought. I think most Orthodox Christians would agree God's good, and yes, it's better to be with God than be apart from God. That's not a particularly amazing thought. But it's surprising how much pushback, particularly from people who are deeply religiously trained, I get to that thought. Because we've had disappointments. We have 2 or 3 major unsolved problems in our life right now. If that's true, then it's not fair for us to communicate to other people that there's no bad news with God, because we ourselves have problems that haven't been solved. We've prayed about things they haven't been answered. That's why the Vineyard's been so helpful with the idea of the already and the not yet as a way to address how could there be a God where things aren't solved if there's no bad news. Let's just work with the idea that truly, in the end, there's nothing you're not going to like about knowing God. The insight goes on to say that the fall of humankind messed up this thought that there's no bad news with God. The idea is that when we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we fell in a very specific way. On the surface, you might think, okay, we ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that means that God did not want us to learn good from evil. So he didn't want us to know right from wrong. But clearly that can't be right. God doesn't want us not to know right from wrong. I can't even believe that's possible. As you read all the scholars, they say, oh no, here's your key mistake. That was an idiom of that era. That was a phrasing that was used when the Bible was written. The knowledge of good means the knowledge of good outcomes. If I make this choice, the outcome will be good. I'll like it. The knowledge of evil is the knowledge of bad outcomes. If I make this choice, my life's going to go badly. And so when we eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what we're saying is, I, without God's input at all, now know that my life will go well if I just make this choice. I don't even need to ask God, because I know that the choice is going to be good and my life will go well. If I marry this person, it will go well. If I take this job, it will go well. And a bad outcome is, if I do that, I'm going to mess up. So I can do all that without God. So we're declaring independence from God. Imagine you're a child of 3 years old. You're in downtown Berlin, and you're with your parents. And at one point, you turn to your parents and you say, Dad, Mom, you know, it's been great being with you. I've so enjoyed all the things you've done to raise me. I really appreciate all the sacrifice, giving me a roof over my head. But you know what? I'm fine. Go home. I'll just stay here by myself. I'll get a job. I'll get an apartment. You know, I'm good. See you later. Thanks a lot. I think that's the image of the fall. That, in other words, what happens after we do that is we realize, I'm a child of 3 in the big city. Am I crazy? I cannot possibly take responsibility for the consequences of my own choices, because I'm not God. I have no idea if this choice is going to make me happy or that choice is going to make me miserable. I have a guess, but choices are way beyond me. And so the second we eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, we invite things into our life. We invite stress, we invite being overwhelmed, and we invite misery. Now, Jesus says there's an antidote to the fall of humankind, and the antidote is, quote, to come to him like a little child. Jesus says, come to me like a little child, and you're going to get a taste of what you had before the fall. You'll get a taste of Sabbath rest, the thing that God had at the end of the creation. You'll get a taste of freedom, of the special world, of the kingdom of God. Come to me like a little child. As if we suddenly turn as the child of 3, and we say, actually, Dad, Mom, if you're still around, that was a stupid decision. I really do just want you to be my parents. I'm the child. You're the parent. You're going to help me with whatever choices I need, and you're going to make a lot of them. I'm so sorry. And we turn around and realize that Mom and Dad never left. They're actually standing right next to us. They were always there. And that's such a wonderful comfort.